The sky over Seoul turned dark at noon. It was not clouds. It was not an eclipse. It was something much bigger than anyone had ever seen before. Yuna stood on the rooftop of the research center and watched. She was 28 years old, a scientist who studied space signals. For 5 years, she had listened to the silence of the universe. Now, the universe was answering back. The ships were massive. Each one was larger than a mountain. They moved slowly through the sky like giant whales swimming through water. There were hundreds of them, blocking out the sun and casting shadows over the entire city. People in the streets below screamed and ran. Cars crashed into each other. Alarms rang from every building. But Yuna did not move. She could not move. Her eyes were fixed on the ships above. Yuna! A voice called from behind her. She turned to see her colleague, Tae, running toward her. He was 32, a former military officer who now worked as a security advisor for the research center. His face was pale with fear. "We need to get inside," he said. "The military is telling everyone to find shelter." "Look at them," Yuna whispered. She pointed at the ships. "Look at how they move." Tae looked up. The ships were not attacking. They were not firing weapons or dropping bombs. They were just floating there, silent and still. "What are they waiting for?" Tae asked. "I don't know," Yuna said. "But I don't think they came here to hurt us." In a small temple outside the city, an old man named Kang sat alone. He was 85 years old, one of the last keepers of the ancient stories. His grandfather had told him tales of beings who came from the sky thousands of years ago. They had great powers. They could control fire and water. They could heal the sick and raise the dead. The people called them gods. Kang had always believed those stories were just myths. Now, as he watched the ships through his window, he was not so sure. "They have returned," he whispered to himself. "After all these years, they have returned." But something felt wrong. In the old stories, the gods came with thunder and lightning. They came with pride and power. These ships were different. They moved carefully, almost nervously. It was like they were afraid. Back in Seoul, the military had set up a command center in the city hall. General Park, a stern woman in her 50s, stood before a wall of screens showing images from all over the world. The ships had appeared everywhere at the same time. New York, London, Tokyo, Cairo, every major city had the same view. "What do we know?" General Park asked her officers. "Nothing, General," a young lieutenant answered. "They're not responding to our signals. They're not doing anything. They're just there." General Park frowned. In her 30 years of service, she had prepared for many threats. Invasions, wars, disasters. But she had never prepared for this. "Keep trying to contact them," she ordered. "And tell our troops to hold their fire. We don't want to start a war we can't win." Hours passed. The sun set behind the ships, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Still, nothing happened. People slowly came out of their shelters. They stood in the streets and stared up at the sky. Fear began to change into curiosity. Yuna had not left the rooftop. She had brought up her equipment and was scanning the ships with every instrument she had. The readings made no sense. The ships seemed to be made of a material that did not exist on Earth. Their energy signatures were unlike anything in her books. "Have you eaten anything?" Tae asked. He had stayed with her, bringing food and water from the cafeteria below. "I'm not hungry," Yuna said. She was looking at one ship in particular. It was smaller than the others and positioned at the front, like a leader guiding its followers. "That one is different," she said, pointing at it. "Its energy is weaker than the others. Like it's tired." "Tired?" Tae raised an eyebrow. "How can a ship be tired?" "I don't know. But something is wrong with them. Look at the way they're grouped together. It's defensive formation. They're protecting themselves. From what? Yuna shook her head. That's what I want to find out. At midnight, something finally happened. The lead ship began to descend. It moved slowly, sinking through the sky like a leaf falling from a tree. It stopped above the Han River, hovering just a few hundred meters above the water. General Park's voice came through the radio. All units, hold your positions. Do not fire unless fired upon. Thousands of soldiers stood ready. Tanks lined the riverbanks. Fighter jets circled overhead. The whole world was watching. A door opened on the bottom of the ship. Light poured out, bright and white. Then, figures began to descend. They floated down on beams of light, like angels coming from heaven. There were 5 of them. They were tall and thin, with skin that shimmered like silver. They had 2 arms, 2 legs, and faces that looked almost human. But their eyes were large and dark, filled with something that Yuna did not expect to see. Fear. The beings landed on a platform that soldiers had quickly assembled on the riverbank. General Park walked forward to meet them, her hand resting on her weapon. I am General Park of the Republic of Korea, she said loudly. Identify yourselves. The beings looked at each other. One of them, the tallest, stepped forward. It opened its mouth and spoke in a language that sounded like music and wind. No one understood. But Yuna, watching from a distance through her binoculars, saw something else. She saw the way the being's hands were shaking. She saw the way its eyes kept looking up at the sky, as if expecting something terrible to appear. She grabbed her radio and called General Park's frequency. General, this is Dr. Yuna from the Space Research Center. I don't think they're here to invade us. I think they're running away from something. There was a long pause. Running? General Park's voice crackled back. Running from what? Yuna looked at the tall being. It had turned to face her direction, as if it could hear her thoughts. Its dark eyes met hers across the distance. In that moment, she understood something that changed everything. The legends were wrong. These were not gods. They were not conquerors. They were not powerful beings who came to rule the earth. They were refugees. And they had come to humanity for help. Old Kang, still watching from his temple, felt tears run down his face. The stories his grandfather told him were real, but his grandfather had not understood their meaning. The beings from the sky were not gods who came to save humanity. They were frightened creatures who hoped humanity could save them. And somewhere, far beyond the stars, something terrible was coming. 1 year had passed since the ships arrived. The world had changed in ways no one could have imagined. Hana stood on the bridge of an alien warship, her hands steady on the controls. She was 25 years old, a former commercial pilot from Bizen who had volunteered for the new joint fleet. Now she was learning to fly a ship that could cross galaxies in hours. Your reflexes are remarkable, said her instructor. An alien named Sue. Sue was younger than Rin. Only 500 years old, but had been a warrior all its life. The scars on its silver skin told stories of battles beyond counting. Thank you, Hana said. But I still do not understand half of these instruments. Understanding will come with time, Sue said. What matters is that you have the instinct. You feel the ship. Most of my people have to think about every movement. You just act. Hana smiled. Humans are good at acting without thinking. Sometimes it gets us in trouble, and sometimes it saves your life. Sue placed a hand on Hana's shoulder. It was a gesture of respect that the aliens had learned from humans. You remind me of myself long ago, before the fear took over. Are you still afraid? Sue was quiet for a moment. Yes, but your people have taught me something. Fear does not have to control you. You can feel it and still fight. You can be terrified and still be brave. Training camps had been set up around the world. Humans and aliens worked side by side, each learning from the other. The aliens taught their technology, how to build faster ships, stronger shields, more powerful energy sources. The humans taught something harder to define, but more important. They taught the will to fight. Tay had become one of the most respected trainers in the program. His methods were simple but effective. He did not just teach combat techniques. He taught philosophy. In our history, he told a group of alien warriors. There was a general named Yi. He faced an invasion with only 12 ships against over 300. Everyone told him to retreat. Everyone said it was impossible. What did he do? One of the warriors asked. He fought. And he won. Tay looked at each warrior in turn. Not because his ships were better. Not because his soldiers were stronger. He won because he refused to believe in defeat. He made the impossible possible through sheer will. The warriors listened in silence. They had heard such stories many times now from many humans. At first, they had thought these tales were just legends, exaggerations meant to inspire. But as they worked with humans, they began to understand. The stories were true. Humans really were this stubborn. Yuna spent her days coordinating the growing alliance. Messages came from alien races across the galaxy, survivors who had escaped the Eaters. They had heard about Earth, about the strange planet where refugees from the sky were being welcomed instead of turned away. They wanted to join. How many ships today? She asked her assistant, a young man named Jin. 47, Jin replied. From 8 different species. They all want to come to Earth. Yuna looked at the reports. 47 more ships. Hundreds of thousands more refugees. Earth's resources were being stretched thin. Some people were starting to complain, to demand that the refugees be turned away. We cannot help everyone, Jin said quietly. There are limits. Yes, Yuna agreed. But we will try anyway. She looked out the window at the sky, now dotted with ships from a dozen worlds. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe. And for better or worse, they had become the center of something much bigger than themselves. The alliance grew. 5 races became 10. 10 became 20. Ships that had been enemies for thousands of years now flew together under a new flag, a flag that bore the image of Earth.R, and watched all of this with wonder. The being who had once thought itself a god now spent its days learning from a species it had once dismissed as primitive. You have done something we could never do, Rin told Yuna one evening. They were standing on a hill outside the city, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors of fire. You have united the galaxy. We have done nothing, Yuna said. We just offered a hand. They chose to take it. That is everything, Rin said. In all our history, no race has ever offered help without expecting something in return. No race has ever welcomed strangers without demanding payment. But your people, you help because you want to help. You welcome because you believe it is right. Is that so strange? Yes, Rin's voice was soft. It is the strangest thing I have ever seen. And the most beautiful. But not everyone was optimistic. In secret meetings around the world, military leaders discussed the harsh reality. We are not ready, General Park said to her fellow commanders. Our ships are faster now. Our weapons are stronger. But we are still building an army of students. The Eaters have been conquering worlds for millions of years. We have had 12 months. What choice do we have? Asked an American general. We run, they follow. We hide, they find us. At least if we fight, we have a chance. What kind of chance? A Russian commander asked. 1%? Less? 1% is not 0, General Park said firmly. 1% is hope. And hope is all we have ever needed. Hana was running combat simulations when the alarm started. She had been practicing for hours, pushing herself harder each day. The simulation was based on actual Eater attacks recordings from doomed worlds that the refugees had brought with them. The alarms were different. They were real. She ran to the bridge, her heart pounding. Sue was already there, its silver face tight with fear. "What is it?" Hannah asked. "Scouts," Sue said. "Eater scouts. At the edge of your solar system." Hannah felt cold wash over her. "How many?" "Just 3. But where there are scouts, the swarm is not far behind." The news spread across Earth within hours. The enemy was coming, sooner than expected. The Alliance had less time than they thought, but something unexpected happened. Instead of panic, there was determination. Instead of despair, there was resolve. In cities around the world, people lined up to volunteer. Not just soldiers, but teachers, doctors, engineers, artists. Everyone wanted to help. Everyone wanted to fight. Old Kang watched the news in his temple. His old bones ached, but his spirit was strong. "We are not ready," he whispered. "But we will fight anyway, because that is what humans do." He walked outside and looked at the sky. The alien ships hung there like promises, like prayers. Behind them, the stars burned with ancient light. Somewhere out there, the darkness was coming. But here on Earth, a light was being born. Una addressed the Alliance that night. Her voice was broadcast to every ship, every base, every screen on Earth. "I will not lie to you," she said. "The enemy is powerful. They have destroyed civilizations that lasted for millions of years. They have weapons we cannot imagine. By every measure, we should lose." She paused, letting the words sink in. "But here is what they do not understand. We are not fighting because we think we will win. We are fighting because it is right. We are fighting because giving up is not in our nature. We are fighting because somewhere, in the heart of every living being, there is a spark that refuses to go out." She looked directly into the camera. "The Eaters think they know fear. They think they understand despair. But they have never faced an enemy like us. They have never faced an enemy that fights without hope. They have never faced humans." Across the fleet, across the planet, billions of beings heard her words. Humans and aliens stood together, united by something stronger than fear. The darkness was coming, but so was the dawn. The tall being had a name. It was called Rin, a sound that meant last light in its language. Rin was not just a leader. Rin was the oldest of its kind, nearly 3,000 years old. It had seen empires rise and fall. It had watched stars die. And now it stood in a conference room in Seoul, trying to explain the end of everything. Una sat across the table from Rin, her translator device between them. Tae stood by the door, silent and watchful. Around them sat representatives from every major nation on Earth. Presidents, prime ministers, generals. Scientists all gathered to hear what Rin had to say. "Tell us about the Eaters," Una said. Rin was quiet for a long moment. Its silver skin seemed to grow darker, as if shadows were moving beneath the surface. "They have no home world," Rin began. "They have no name for themselves. We call them Eaters because that is what they do. They eat." "Eat what?" asked the American president, a gray-haired man with tired eyes. "Everything." Rin's voice was flat. "Matter, energy, life, even time itself. They consume it all. They leave nothing behind. Not even memories." "How is that possible?" a Russian scientist asked. "You cannot eat time." Rin looked at him. "Your science is young. There are things in this universe you cannot imagine. The Eaters exist outside your understanding. They were old when the first stars were born. They will be here when the last star dies." The room went silent. Una could feel the fear spreading among the people around her, but she refused to let it take her. "How do they attack?" She asked. What weapons do they use? They do not need weapons, Rin said. They are the weapon. Each eater is a living void. When they touch something, that thing ceases to exist. It is not destroyed. It is erased. As if it never was. Tay spoke up from the doorway. How do you fight something like that? Rin turned to look at him. We tried everything. Energy weapons, physical weapons, biological weapons. We built ships that could move faster than light. We created shields that could stop a supernova. None of it mattered. The eaters simply ate it all. Then how are you still alive? Yuna asked. We ran. Rin's voice cracked with shame. For 10,000 years, we ran. We hid in the darkest corners of the galaxy. We watched as they consumed world after world. And now, there is nowhere left to run. General Park leaned forward. How long until they find Earth? They already know we are here, Rin said. I can feel them. They are coming. In your time measurement, perhaps 2 of your years. Perhaps less. 2 years. Yuna felt the weight of those words pressing down on her chest. 2 years to prepare for an enemy that had destroyed 100 civilizations. That is not enough time, the Chinese premier said. We cannot build a defense in 2 years. No, Rin agreed. But you can teach us something more valuable than weapons. What? Rin stood up from the table. It walked to the window and looked out at the city below. People were going about their lives, walking to work, buying food, laughing with friends. They had no idea how close the end was. When we first came to your world, Rin said, we thought we were gods. We had technology you could not understand. We had lifespans your ancestors could not imagine. We felt superior. We felt invincible. Rin turned back to face the room. But we were wrong. We had power, but we did not have strength. We had knowledge, but we did not have wisdom. When the eaters came, we froze. We could not understand how to face something we could not defeat. So we ran. And humans are different? Yuna asked. Yes. Rin's dark eyes seemed to glow. Your history is filled with impossible battles. Small groups standing against great armies. Single people changing the fate of nations. You have a quality we lost long ago, a quality we did not even know we had lost until we saw it in you. What quality? You fight without certainty. You hope without evidence. You love without guarantee. These things make no logical sense. And yet, they make you the most dangerous race in the galaxy. The room was silent. Yuna looked around at the faces of the world's leaders. She saw confusion, fear, doubt. But she also saw something else. She saw a spark. What do you need from us? She asked Rin. Teachers, Rin said. Not for technology. Not for weapons. We need teachers for the soul. We need humans to show us how to be brave again. Over the next few weeks, a plan took shape. The alien ships would land in designated areas around the world. Their people would live among humans, learning and working together. In return, they would share their technology, not for weapons, but for survival. Yuna was put in charge of the integration program. It was the biggest challenge of her life, but she did not hesitate. She organized teams, created training programs, and built bridges between 2 very different civilizations. Tay became her right hand. His military background made him perfect for working with the alien crews. He spent his days on the ships, learning how they worked, understanding their systems. Their technology is amazing, he told Yuna one evening. They were standing on the roof of the research center, watching the alien ships glow softly in the darkness. But their spirits are broken. I saw a soldier today, one of their warriors. He had scars all over his body from battles I cannot imagine. But his eyes were empty. He had given up. Can we help him? Yuna asked. I do not know. but I am going to try." Tay was true to his word. He started training with the alien warriors, teaching them the fighting styles of Earth, not just the physical techniques, but the mental strength behind them. The idea that defeat was not the end. The belief that every battle was worth fighting, even the ones you could not win. Slowly, things began to change. The aliens started to smile. They started to laugh. They started to hope. Ran came to Yuna one day, its silver skin shimmering in the sunlight. "I do not understand your people," it said. "Yesterday, I saw a human child fall and hurt herself. She was crying. But then she stood up and tried again. She fell again. She stood up again. This happened 5 times before she succeeded. Why did she not stop?" Yuna smiled. "Because that is how we learn. Failure is not the end. It is just a step on the way." Rin shook its head in wonder. "In our culture, failure is shame. If you fail, you hide. You do not try again. Then no wonder you could not fight the Eaters," Yuna said gently. "You were afraid to fail. But failure is not something to fear. It is something to learn from." Rin was quiet for a long moment. Then it looked at Yuna with new eyes. "You are a teacher," it said. "Not just of knowledge, but of courage. I understand now why we came here. We did not come for your weapons or your technology. We came for your wisdom." "We are not wise," Yuna said. "We are just stubborn." Rin laughed. It was a strange sound, like bells in the wind. Perhaps stubbornness is the highest form of wisdom. Meanwhile, old Kang had become something of a celebrity. His knowledge of the ancient stories made him valuable to the scientists, trying to understand the history between humans and aliens. He spent his days in meetings and interviews, sharing tales that had been passed down for generations. But at night, alone in his temple, he prayed. He prayed for the young people who would have to face the coming darkness. He prayed for the aliens who had lost their way. And he prayed for humanity, the strange and stubborn race that refused to accept the impossible. "We are not gods," he whispered to the stars. "We are not perfect. But we do not give up. That is our gift. That is our curse. And that is why we will win." The stars offered no answer. But somewhere in the vast emptiness of space, something was listening, and it was starting to wonder if it had finally met its match. 3 days had passed since the ships arrived. The world had not ended. There were no attacks, no destruction, no war. Instead, there was something stranger. There was silence. The beings had not spoken again after their first attempt. They stood on the platform by the Han River, surrounded by soldiers and scientists, waiting. For what, no one knew. Yuna had not slept in 2 days. She spent every hour studying the beings, trying to find a way to communicate. She tried every language on Earth. She tried mathematics. She tried music. Nothing worked. "You need to rest," Tay told her on the 3rd morning. He handed her a cup of coffee. "You'll make yourself sick." "I'm close to something," Yuna said. Her eyes were red and tired, but there was fire in them. Their language has a pattern. It's not random. It's like they're speaking in frequencies, not words. Frequencies? Sound waves. Different pitches carry different meanings. Yuna turned to her computer and pulled up a graph. "See this?" When the tall one said the first thing, the sound wave looked like this. When it repeated the same gesture, the wave was identical. That means it has a fixed vocabulary. Tay looked at the graph, but understood nothing. "So, what do we do with that?" "We build a translator." Yuna smiled for the first time in days. "If we can map their frequencies to our words, we can talk to them." It took another 2 days to build the device. Yuna worked with a team of engineers and linguists from around the world. The United Nations had taken over the contact effort, bringing together the best minds from every country. But it was Yuna's idea that cracked the code. On the sixth day, she walked onto the platform holding a small speaker. General Park stood beside her, along with a dozen soldiers and officials from different nations. The tall being watched her approach. Its dark eyes followed her every step. Up close, Yuna could see details she had missed before. The being's skin was not just silver, it was covered in tiny scales that shifted color in the light. Its hands had 6 fingers instead of 5. And its face, while human-like, held an expression of deep sadness. Yuna pressed a button on the speaker. A sound came out, a series of tones that rose and fell like a song. The being's eyes went wide. It stepped forward, its body trembling. Then it spoke back, its voice matching the tones from the speaker. The speaker translated. "You understand." US, Yuna felt her heart pound. It worked. It actually worked. "Yes," she said into the device. "We understand you." The being fell to its knees. The other 4 beings behind it did the same. They lowered their heads to the ground, their bodies shaking. We have waited so long," the being said. "We did not think anyone would remember." General Park stepped forward. "Remember what?" The being looked up. "We came to your world 10,000 of your years ago. We were explorers then, young and foolish. We showed your ancestors things they should not have seen. Fire from nothing, healing without medicine, metal birds that flew through the sky. You taught us these things?" Yuna asked. "No." The being shook its head. "We only showed you. We did not teach. We were proud. We wanted your people to worship us. And you did. You called us gods." There was a murmur among the human officials. The old stories, the myths, the legends, they were all true. But the truth was not what anyone expected. "Why did you leave?" Yuna asked. The being's face darkened. "Because they found us." "Who?" "The Eaters." The being's voice dropped to a whisper. "They are a race older than the stars. They move from world to world, consuming everything. Life, matter, energy, nothing escapes them. 10,000 years ago, they came for us. We ran. We left your world and fled to the far edges of the galaxy. And now?" General Park asked. Her voice was hard. "Why are you here now?" The being stood up slowly. It looked at the general with eyes full of shame. "Because we lost. We fought them for thousands of years. We united with other races, built great armies, created weapons of unimaginable power. It was not enough. The Eaters destroyed everything. Billions of lives across 100 worlds, all gone." The being spread its arms, gesturing at the ships above. "This is all that remains of our people. 300 ships. 20 million souls. We have nowhere else to go." Silence fell over the platform. Yuna looked at the being and saw the truth in its eyes. This was not a conqueror. This was not a god. This was a survivor, begging for shelter. "Why come to us?" She asked softly. "We are just one planet. We have no great armies, no powerful weapons. What can we do against something that destroyed your entire civilization?" The being looked at her. Then, slowly, it smiled. It was a strange smile, full of wonder and fear and something else. "Hope. Because you are different," it said. "We have watched your world from afar. We have seen your wars, your struggles, your suffering. And we have seen something that no other race in the galaxy has." "What is that?" "You do not stop." The being's voice grew stronger. "Every other race we have met, when faced with impossible odds, they surrendered. They accepted defeat. They died quietly. But your people fight. You fight when you are outnumbered. You fight when you are outmatched. You fight even when there is no chance of victory. The being stepped closer to Yuna. Its dark eyes stared into hers. We have studied your history. Your great wars, your small battles, your personal struggles. You have a word for it. What is it called? Yuna thought for a moment. Stubborn? The being shook its head. No, the other word. The better word. Hope? No, the word that means you will not give up even when hope is gone. Tay spoke up from behind Yuna. Determination. The being turned to look at him. Yes, determination. That is what you have. That is what we lost. That is why we came. General Park stepped forward. Her face was stern, but Yuna could see something new in her eyes. Understanding. You want us to fight for you, the general said. You want us to face an enemy that destroyed 100 worlds. No, the being said. We do not want you to fight for us. We want you to teach us. Teach us how to fight like you do. Teach us how to have determination when all hope is gone. Teach us how to be human. The words hung in the air like a prayer. Around the world, billions of people watched the broadcast. They heard the being's request, and they felt something stir inside them. Old Kang, still watching from his temple, finally understood. His grandfather's stories were not about gods who came to save humanity. They were about frightened beings who saw something special in the human spirit. Now, those beings had returned. Not as rulers, but as students. Not with pride, but with humility. And they were asking humanity for the one thing they could not find anywhere else in the universe. The will to never give up. Yuna looked at the being. She looked at the ships in the sky. She looked at the soldiers and scientists and leaders gathered around her. Then she spoke the words that would change the history of two civilizations. We will help you, she said. But not because you asked. Not because you begged. We will help you because it is the right thing to do. And because that is what humans do. The being bowed its head. Tears, silver and strange, fell from its dark eyes. Thank you, it whispered. Thank you for giving us what we lost. Thank you for giving us hope. And somewhere, far across the galaxy, the Eaters felt a ripple in the fabric of space. Something had changed. Something new had entered the war. They did not know what it was. But for the first time in 1,000,000 years, they felt something unexpected. Uncertainty. The Eaters arrived on a Tuesday morning. Yuna was drinking her coffee when the sky turned black. Not dark, not shadowy black. As if someone had painted over the stars with ink. The blackness spread across the heavens like a disease, swallowing light itself. And then she saw them. They were not ships. They were not creatures. They were something in between. Vast shapes that moved without moving, that existed without existing. Looking at them hurt her eyes. Her brain refused to process what it was seeing. The Eaters had come, and they were hungry. All ships, engage, came General Park's voice over the communications. This is it. Everything we have trained for. Make them remember us. Hannah was in her cockpit, her hands steady on the controls. Around her, thousands of ships rose from Earth-human ships, alien ships, ships cobbled together from a dozen different technologies. They were not an army. They were a family. Stay on my wing, Sue's voice crackled in her ear. The alien warrior had become her partner over the past months, her friend. We fight together. We die together, Hannah replied. It was not a sad thing to say. It was a promise. The first wave of Eaters crashed into the fleet like a tsunami hitting a sandcastle. Ships vanished without explosions, without screams. They simply stopped existing. One moment they were there. The next, they were gone. Erased from reality. Hannah dodged and weaved, her human instincts keeping her alive where logic would have failed. She fired her weapons beams of pure energy that the aliens had taught them to build. The beams struck an Eater and did nothing. The creatures simply absorbed the energy and kept coming. Nothing works. Someone screamed over the radio. Our weapons are useless. But Tay's voice cut through the chaos. Then use your ships. Ram them. Crash into them. Make them feel pain. It was insane. It was suicide. It was exactly what humans would do. The first ship to follow Tay's order was piloted by a woman from Brazil. She turned her vessel straight into an eater's path and accelerated. At the moment of impact, something impossible happened. The eater screamed. It was not a sound anyone had ever heard before. It was the sound of something ancient experiencing something new. The sound of something invincible feeling pain for the first time in a million years. And then the eater died. The creature that had destroyed worlds, that had ended civilizations, that had eaten stars, it fell apart like ashes in the wind. One human, one ship, one sacrifice. That was all it took. Yuna watched from the command center on Earth, tears streaming down her face. "They can die," she whispered. "They can actually die." The word spread through the fleet like wildfire. The enemy could be killed. It was costly, it was painful, but it was possible. And for humans, possible was enough. More ships turned toward the eaters. Pilots of every race, guided by humans, fueled by hope, began their final flights. Each collision took an eater with it. Each death meant something, but it was not enough. For every eater that fell, 10 more appeared. The swarm was endless. The darkness kept growing. Old Kang stood outside his temple, watching the sky burn. He was too old to fight, too weak to help. But he could do one thing. He could pray. "Ancestors," he whispered. "Gods of the old world. Spirits of the earth and sky. Hear me now. Give our children strength. Give them courage. Give them victory." He did not know if anyone was listening, but he prayed anyway. On the battlefield, Hana made her decision. Sue had been hit. The alien ship was damaged, drifting toward the enemy lines. Without hesitation, Hana turned her ship around. "What are you doing?" Sue demanded. "Save yourself." "I do not leave my friends," Hana said simply. She grabbed Sue's ship with a tractor beam and began to pull it toward safety. An eater turned toward her. Its void-like body stretched and reached. In seconds, it would consume them both. But then something happened. Another ship appeared, a tiny vessel barely the size of a car. It was Rin's personal craft. "Go," Rin said over the radio. "Save the warrior." "I will hold them." "Rin, no." Yuna's voice screamed from Earth. "You cannot." "I can," Rin said softly. "And I will, because you taught me how." The ancient being, 3,000 years old, aimed its ship at the eater. In its final moments, Rin felt something it had not felt in centuries. Not fear, not despair, peace. "Thank you," Rin whispered. "Thank you for teaching me to be brave." The ship struck the eater. Both were consumed in a flash of light that shone brighter than any star. Across the fleet, the aliens who had once worshipped Rin saw their leader fall. But they did not weep. They did not run. Instead, they fought harder. They screamed Rin's name and charged into the darkness. The battle raged for hours. The sky above Earth became a canvas of fire and shadow. Ships fell by the thousands. Lives ended by the millions. But humanity and its allies did not stop. And then, something changed. The eaters began to retreat. At first, no one believed it. The creatures that had never known defeat, never known fear, never known anything but hunger, they were pulling back. Yuna stared at her screens in shock. Why? Why are they leaving? The answer came from an unexpected source. A signal broadcast from deep within the eater swarm. It was not their language. It was not any language. It was pure emotion, translated by machines into words. "You are Wrong. You should not exist. You break the rules. We do not understand. We will learn. We will return. But today, we leave. And just like that, the darkness began to lift. The blackness faded from the sky. The stars reappeared, one by one. The eaters were gone. Yuna collapsed into her chair, unable to process what had happened. They had won. Against impossible odds, against an enemy that should have destroyed them. They had won. But the cost was high. Millions dead. Countless ships destroyed. Whole species reduced to mere hundreds. The victory was real, but it was paid for in blood. Hana landed her damaged ship on Earth, Sue still in tow. They stepped out onto the soil together, alien and human, warriors and friends. We did it, Hana said, her voice breaking. We actually did it. Sue looked at the sky, at the stars that were slowly returning to their places. You did it, the alien said. Humans did this. You showed the universe what courage looks like. Tay found them on the landing field. He was covered in ash and blood, but his eyes were bright. The generals are already planning the next defense, he said. The eaters said they would return. Let them, Hana said. We will be waiting. In the days that followed, the survivors gathered to mourn and to celebrate. They built memorials for the fallen. They told stories of heroes who had given everything. And they began to rebuild. Yuna stood before the United Nations, now expanded to include representatives from 30 alien races. She looked out at the sea of faces, human and otherwise, and felt the weight of history on her shoulders. The legends were wrong, she said. They told us that gods descended from the sky. They told us that we were small, weak, helpless. They told us to worship and obey. She paused, letting the words echo through the chamber. But the truth is different. The beings we called gods were just people. Scared, lost, desperate people who needed help. And we gave it to them. Not because we were gods. Not because we were special. But because we were human. She looked at each face in turn. Today, we are no longer just one planet. We are a family of worlds. We are an alliance of survivors. And we have proven something that the universe did not expect. We have proven that hope is stronger than fear. That love is stronger than hate. That one small planet, full of stubborn, foolish, beautiful creatures, can change the fate of the stars. The chamber erupted in applause. Humans and aliens cheered together, their voices rising as one. Old Kang, watching from his temple, smiled. The prayers had been answered. Not by gods, but by something better taught by humanity. And somewhere, far across the galaxy, the Eaters watched. They had tasted defeat for the first time in their eternal existence. They did not understand it. They did not like it, but they respected it. The humans had done what no one else could. They had stood against the void and refused to be erased. They had taught the universe a new lesson. That legends could be rewritten, that gods could fall, and that the most powerful force in existence was not darkness or destruction, that it was the stubborn, unbreakable, impossible spirit of humanity. The end.